our question to this is, who was God referring to in Genesis chapter 1 verse 26 as us?
Well, again, in dealing with biblical concepts, question and answers really doesn't cut it, because it will take you many years to understand some sentences I am even making within 1 minute. It will take you years to understand that sentence, because it takes time to come to terms with scriptural concepts. However, just by reason of teasers, just to help those of you that desire to grow and learn, let me warn once again, these questions are not exhaustive. They are just by way of giving you an enlightenment into a detailed study that you require to get involved with. Now in Genesis 1:26, the man there, let us, was God's intent, God's plan, God's program. Genesis 1 is the entire program of God concerning the new creation. So when God says, let us make man in our image, the New Testament explains the Old Testament. Okay, so the man in Genesis 1, David was still interrogating in Psalms chapter 8 verse 4. What is man that thou art mindful of? Because David could not understand this man that Moses was talking about in Genesis chapter 1. Then the writer of Hebrews now brought it out. He says, one in a certain place, he asks, what is man that thou art mindful of? Nor the son of man that thou visitest him. Thou hast made him a little lower than the angels for the suffering of death. Thou hast crowned him with glory and honor, that he by the grace of God should taste death for everyone. He said, but when we look, we do not yet see man in that authority. So it could not be man that God was talking about in Genesis 1:26. God was talking about man, but not man. So that man will be the man Jesus, because verse 9 says, when we look well, then we see Jesus. Number two, that man in Genesis 1:26 is the image of God. There is nowhere the Bible calls Adam the image of God. Colossians 1:15 calls Jesus the image of the invisible God. Hebrews chapter 1 verse 3 calls Jesus the express image of God. Not once was Adam ever called the image of God. So the image of God in Genesis 1:26 is Jesus. So what God was actually saying is, his intent is that out of the Godhead will comfort a man who will be a substitute for the fallen man. So Jesus is the man that came out of the Godhead, the image and the likeness of God. Then in Genesis chapter 2, God now formed man and gave man the opportunity to choose Jesus or reject Jesus. And Adam rejected Jesus. So God now said, she shall bring forth a seed, and the seed of the woman shall bruise the head of the serpent. The fullness of time, Jesus came as that seed, as that image of God, to redeem fallen man from the predicament of his rebellion against the word of God. So that man in Genesis 1:26 is the man, Jesus Christ.